Winterfell was quiet in the way only a fortress after battle could be. Too many empty beds, too many new mounds beneath the snow. The wind prowled along the battlements and down the chimneys, keen as a knife, and Sansa Stark stood at her window, letting the cold bite her cheeks until they ached. Below, men moved through the courtyard, dark shapes beneath the slowing snow. Stark soldiers, northern levies, a sprinkling of armored knights from the Vale. They crossed and recrossed the yard like ants rebuilding a shattered hill, but all of their industry could not fill the absence that hung over the castle. There was no laughter, there was no music, there was only the sound of hammers and the soft thud of shovels in frozen earth. She watched long enough for her breath to leave a ghostly fog on the glass and traced one gloved finger through it, drawing nothing in particular, only lines interlocking and crossing, like threads on a loom. She stopped when she realized they looked like streets in a city far to the south. King's Landing. Her hand fell to her side. She had seen the city last when it burned golden in the sunset. All red roofs and white stone, and the gleam of the red keep on its hill. She had hated it then. She still did. But hate was not what held her tonight. Hate was simple, clear. This new feeling was something else. Something colder, more intricate, like ice creeping through the cracks in stone. A rap sounded at her chamber door. "Come," she said, startled at the steadiness of her voice. The door opened to admit Maester Wolkan, his thin frame almost swallowed by his gray robes. Snow dusted his shoulders. In his hands, he held a wooden tray, and upon it, a single cylinder of dark wood bound with black ribbon. "A raven from the south, my lady," he said, "marked from the Citadel, for the lords of the north." "The lords are sleeping," Sansa replied. Jon had gone to his bed like a man who had carried a mountain all day and set it down only for a moment. He had not truly rested in weeks. "Read it to me." Wolkan hesitated. "It may concern matters." "Read it," Sansa said, and turned at last from the window. They sat by the small iron brazier that smoldered in the corner, its heat a poor match against the northern night. Wolkan unbound the raven's message with careful fingers and smoothed the parchment. The wax bore the seal of the Citadel, but the first lines of the text were written in the hand of a man who had never seen Winterfell. Neat, elegant, and utterly foreign. As the maester read, the brazier's glow seemed to dim. The destruction of the Great Sept of Baelor in King's Landing, together with his Grace King Tommen Baratheon and many high lords and septons of the realm. Sansa's breath caught. "The September," she murmured. "Destroyed." "Aye, my lady," Wolkan said softly, "by wildfire." The message says, "A vast cache, beneath the city, all consumed. The Tyrells are dead, the faith militant broken." Her mind conjured the September's great dome, the cool marble, the smell of incense. She saw her younger self on the steps in a dress of pale blue, Joffrey's hand bruising at her arm, the gold-cloaked spears pressing at her back. She saw the statue of the mother, serene and blind. She tried to imagine it all obliterated in green fire and could not. "Who rules?" she asked. The answer she already knew in her bones. Wolkan swallowed. "The Citadel writes that Queen Cersei Lannister now sits the Iron Throne. Her son died shortly after the calamity. Some say from grief. Others, he did not finish." Sansa stared at the dancing coals in the brazier until they blurred. Queen Cersei. Her mind slid back to that cold, perfumed hand on her shoulder, the murmured words in a soft, purring voice. "I will not forget this. Be careful, little dove. Kings fall and wars are lost, and the north is far away." It seemed Cersei had not forgotten at all. She had climbed over the ruins of her own blood. "Thank you, Maester," Sansa said. Her tone was mild. Only the whiteness of her knuckles where she gripped the arm of her chair betrayed her. "Shall I wake Lord Stark?" Wolkan asked. He said it as if Jon had always borne the name, as if he had been born to it. "Not yet," Sansa said. "He will need his rest. There will be more ravens, more news." "You may leave us, Maester." "Us, my lady?" Wolkan frowned. Sansa's lips curved, but there was no warmth in it. "Me and my thoughts," she said. When the maester had gone and the door closed softly behind him, she sat for a long time in the half-dark, listening to the hiss of coals and the faint, relentless sigh of the wind. Queen Cersei, the September in ruins, a boy king falling from a window, the small white hands on his frame, the long drop, the sudden stop. Sansa rose and went back to the window. "So," she whispered, though no one was there to hear, "you burned it all and took your throne, and you think that's the end of it." Her reflection in the glass looked back at her. Taller now, the girl's plumpness gone from her face, the Tully auburn of her hair darkened by shadow and time. She saw not a lady, nor a girl, nor a northern queen. She saw a player. The realization did not come with triumph. Came with a terrible, steady calm. If Cersei Lannister thought she had taught Sansa nothing, she was wrong. And if the South could be taken by fire, perhaps it could be taken back by something colder still. The maps had once belonged to Robb. They still smelled faintly of leather and pine resin, that warm, practical scent of marching tents and council tables. Sansa smoothed her hand over the curling edge of one, pressing it flat where the north met the neck. Her fingers lingered there, on that long, narrow bridge between worlds. The South was a different country. She had lived there and survived it, but she had never understood it. Not truly. Not the way one understood the shape of a winter storm or the paths of wolves. But now, as she stared at the ink-sketched coastline, the spiderweb of roads leading in toward the circle of King's Landing, she felt something click. "It is not the stones that make a city," she murmured. "It is what people say about it." Her younger self had believed the stories told to her, of gallant knights and noble kings, of tournaments and love and a throne where wisdom ruled. She had believed Cersei's smiles were the smiles of a queen. She had believed Joffrey was what a hero looked like. Stories had almost killed her. Now she understood their power. Sansa reached for a blank sheet of parchment. Her hand hovered, then moved, dipping the quill in ink with slow deliberation. She did not yet write, only let the quill hang above the pristine surface, a droplet of black gathering at its tip. What would they say of Cersei in the months to come? What words would be whispered in taverns and septs, in noble halls and muddy streets? Those words would matter more than steel, for steel followed fear and hope. The Citadel stiff account had used phrases like calamity and tragedy and regrettable loss. It would not be enough. Those were words meant to soothe lords and polite company. The small folk would need something sharper. "Kinslayer," Sansa said under her breath, testing the word. It sat in her mouth like iron. "Queenslayer, September burner, child killer." She thought of Tommen, the boy with the soft face and the bewildered eyes. She had watched him feed his cats with such delighted care. Had he screamed when he fell? Had Cersei watched? Once, the thought would have filled Sansa with pure, hot rage. Now it settled into a different place inside her. A cold ledger, a line of ink on a page. Cersei had murdered more than people. She had murdered trust, faith, the illusion of safety that could be used. She set the quill to the parchment and began to write, not as Sansa Stark, not as Lady of Winterfell or sister to the king in the north, but as no one in particular. A maester, perhaps, or a careful lord. The hand she adopted was measured, deferential, almost dry. It spoke of the September's destruction as a sign of divine displeasure. It quoted scripture that condemned kinslaying and regicide. It carefully enumerated the deaths of lords and ladies long beloved by their people and suggested, oh so politely, that their survivors might wish to consider where their loyalties lay. She did not sign it. At the bottom, she left only a neat flourish and space where another hand might add a name later. When that was done, she took another parchment and wrote a different sort of message entirely. This one was shorter, its ink heavier from the press of her hand. "You write that the people starve in the city." She penned to a merchant in White Harbor she had never met but whose debts Lord Manderley had mentioned in passing. "The granaries are empty. The faith is broken. The queen has burned her own court. There is profit in famine," she added, "but there is more in peace." Then another letter, to a nameless scribe in Old Town whose cousin had been a stable boy in the Red Keep, to a hedge knight in the Riverlands, rumored to have fled the capital after seeing green flame licking at the skyline, to a quiet septon in Gulltown, who had written, years before, of the tears he'd shed over a young northern girl beset by southern wolves. Each letter was different, but each carried the same seed. Cersei is mad. She is cursed. She has broken every vow that makes a ruler sacred. She set down the quill and flexed her cramped hand. The candle had burned low, its wax pooled at the base of the holder. Beyond the window, Winterfell's towers stood like black teeth against the snow-bright sky. She thought of Cersei's fingers on her hair, braiding it in the southern fashion while speaking of love and lions. She thought of Littlefinger's hand at her back at the Ares moon door, his breath like smoke as he whispered lies into Lisa's ear. She thought of Ramsay's smile. All of them had taught her the same lesson, in different tongues. Power was not only what you held in your hand, it was what others believed you held. Sansa pushed back from the table and wrapped her fur-lined cloak more tightly around her shoulders. Her breath clouded in the chill air as she moved to the door. She could not do this alone. Not entirely. For a spider to weave a web this large, it needed other strands already stretched between walls. And there was one man in Winterfell who had made his life out of spinning them. The Godswood had always been her father's place, a sanctuary of silence and rustling leaves. Now, in deep winter, the pool was a frozen mirror, and the heart tree's face was a pale blur behind a veil of frost. Its red leaves shivered in the wind, the color of dried blood. Peter Baelish looked out of place beneath its boughs. His silks were hidden beneath a thick cloak, but he carried the south with him in the tilt of his shoulders and the smoothness of his voice. "You choose a cold place for warm talk, my lady," he said, breath puffing white. "Are you certain you would not prefer a chamber with a fire?" "I'm certain," Sansa said. She had summoned him at dawn, before the castle fully woke, before Jon stirred from his restless sleep. Peter had come at once, of course. He always did when it was she who called. "It seems the world has changed again," he went on. "I heard your maester received a raven. Terrible news from the capital. Tragic, truly." He did not sound tragic. He sounded intrigued. "The Great September is gone," Sansa said. "And Tommen, and the Tyrells, all in one stroke." "Efficient," Peter murmured. "I will say that for Cersei, she is not one for half measures." "Is that admiration?" Sansa asked. He smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "An observation. When someone moves a piece so boldly, one must ask what board they think they are playing on." "Not the same one as the rest of us," Sansa said. "She has made enemies of the Reach, the Faith, and half the Crownlands. There are no allies left to her but her own shadow. And her army," Peter said. "And the Red Keep, and a throne of swords." He sighed, watching her. "Say what you mean, Sansa. You did not drag me into the snow at this hour to mourn a boy king." She met his gaze, unflinching. There was a time when his eyes had seen through her like glass. Now she let him look and see only what she chose. "I want you to imagine something with me," she said. "Imagine that no lord in the south wishes to march on King's Landing. They have lost too much already. The Reach is in chaos. The Riverlands are burned. The Westerlands are broke with war. No one has the strength or the hunger for another bloody campaign." Peter tilted his head. "Very well, I imagine it. A realm too exhausted to fight. What then?" "Then the throne will not fall to any sword," Sansa said. "It will fall to the story people tell about the woman who sits on it." He was silent for a moment, snowflakes catching in his neatly trimmed beard. "Go on," he said softly. "Cersei rules because the realm is too afraid to say she does not," Sansa continued. "But what if their fear is turned? What if every septon from Old Town to Gulltown begins to preach that the gods have condemned her? What if every song in every tavern calls her a kinslayer? What if merchants whisper that her reign brings famine, that ships sink when she speaks, that crops wither when she smiles?" She could see it as she spoke, the murmurs spreading, like cracks in frozen ice. Rumors, Peter said. You propose to topple the Lannisters with gossip? With faith, she corrected. With guilt. With the things people already suspect, given voice and shape. She nodded toward the heart tree. You told me once that chaos is a ladder, but chaos is also a fog. People stumble in it. They cling to the first solid thing they find. And you would be that thing? His tone was amused, but his eyes were intent. Not at first, Sansa said. At first I am nothing, a name forgotten by the South. Let them curse the Queen, count their dead, feel their hunger. Let them whisper for months, a year, that the gods will not suffer her to rule. And then, Peter asked. And then, she said, when they have had time to despise her, they will look for someone else. Someone untouched by the September, by the Red Wedding, by all their wars. A lady wronged by Lannisters who does not ask for revenge. Only peace. Snow creaked beneath Peter's boots as he shifted his weight. You speak very calmly of a throne that has chewed and spat out better players than most, he said. Do you truly believe the lords of the South will accept a Stark girl in their most coveted chair? I am not only a Stark girl, Sansa answered. I was the betrothed of Joffrey Baratheon. I was wed to Tyrion Lannister. I saw Cersei every day for years. I learned from her, from all of them. And what did you learn? Peter's voice was almost gentle. That the throne cares only for who can hold it, Sansa said. And that there is more than one way to make men kneel. For a heartbeat, he looked at her as if seeing a stranger. Then that slipping, sly smile returned. You would have need of friends, of course, he said. Quills and tongues in the right ears. Some of which I happen to possess. At a price. She had known that word was coming. It did not sting as once it would have. You want the North, she said. Or me. Or both. I want you safe and powerful, he said smoothly. The precise shape of that power is negotiable. Then hear my terms, Sansa said. You will write to your men in the Vale, in the Fingers, in Gulltown. To every petty lord and half-starved knight who owes you coin or secrets. They will carry my words, though they need not know they are mine. They will see doubts about Cersei's right to rule. They will whisper of the god's wrath and the queen's madness. And in return, he asked. In return, she said, you will stand with the king in the north when the time comes, and you will speak for me in southern courts as you once spoke for the Lannisters. You will not betray this plan to any Lannister, Tyrell, or Frey, living or dead. And you will remember that it is my hand on this web, not yours. Peter laughed softly, the sound misting in the cold. You threaten me with the wrath of ghosts? With the wrath of the living, she said. Of the North. Of me. His expression sobered. For an instant, something like pride flick. Red in his eyes, quickly masked. Oh, Sansa, he murmured. My dear, I begin to think I taught you too well. No, she said. You only showed me half the board. The rest I learned myself. He bowed, a graceful, courtly dip of the head incongruous in the silent godswood. Very well, I will send your sermons. But understand this, once such whispers are loosed, they cannot be called back. You may find they unmake more than you intend. I know, Sansa said. The heart tree watched them with its carved eyes, red sap frozen on its trunk like old tears. Sansa felt those eyes upon her as she turned away. There was no way back to the girl who had prayed beneath those boughs for a golden-haired prince's love. There was only forward, into a world Cersei Lannister had set aflame, and that Sansa Stark would learn to reshape from the ashes. The great hall smelled of smoke, steel, and the faint lingering scent of the feast that had once celebrated victory over Ramsay. Now only a few servants moved through its vastness, feeding the twin hearths and sweeping away wind-blown snow where the doors did not quite close. At the high table, the benches were empty save for 3 figures. Jon Royce's bronze armor gleamed even in the meager light, its runes dulled by use but still proud. He stood like a carved pillar, thick arms folded, watching as Maester Wolkan spread out scrolls and tally sticks and lists of names across the tabletop. Sansa stood between them, her hands resting lightly on the rough wood. Jon should have been there by all rights, but he had gone to inspect the outer fortifications with Davos and Tormund. There were always more walls to check, more stores to measure. Winter, the real winter, was coming, and Jon's eyes were fixed north. Hers, for the moment, were turned south. "Lord Royce," she said, "you have men in the Vale who speak with the lords of Gulltown, Runestone, even the little fishing hamlets along the coast." "Aye," he said slowly, "the Vale is my home, whatever tricks Lord Baelish thinks he plays there." "You also have Septons loyal to your house," Sansa went on. "Men who preach in quiet villages and small septs the knights rarely see." Royce grunted. "I do." "And what is it you want those Septons to preach, my lady?" "Not my name," Sansa said. "Not yet. I want them to preach that a queen who burns the holiest place in the realm cannot sit easily in the gods' favor. That such an act demands penitence. A trial, even. A reckoning." Yohn Royce's thick brows drew together. "You mean to stir the faith against Cersei Lannister? That was tried once, and ended with the High Sparrow naught but ash." "It ended with him ash because he underestimated who he challenged," Sansa said. "I do not underestimate her. That is why I will not put my face to this or my name. Let the realm think this is the god speaking, or conscience, or common sense. Let them ask among themselves how long a kinslayer may rule before lightning finds her." Royce studied her with his steady soldier's gaze. "You speak as though war is a board game," he said. "Men die when queens are unseated." "Men die when queens are left in place as well," Sansa answered quietly. "You have seen the reports, my lord. The burned granaries, the rioting in Flea Bottom. She does not feed her people. She does not pray for them. She burns them when they stand in her way." Wolkan cleared his throat. "I have correspondence from a brother in the Citadel who writes that even there, some whisper the gods have turned their faces from King's Landing," he offered. "It would take little to, encourage such whispers." "You see," Sansa said, "the field is already sown. We only need to tend it. If the world begins to doubt that Cersei's rule is lawful in the eyes of the gods, her power weakens without a single sword drawn in the north or the Vale." Royce scraped his knuckles along his beard, considering. "And when that happens, who do they turn to?" "Whoever seems least dangerous," Sansa said. "Least hungry. The realm is tired. It will not flock to a conqueror with dragons or a new boy king with a lion's sigil. It will look for someone who promises an end to surprises." "And you believe that's you," he said. "I believe I can be made to look that way," she replied. "If, when the time comes, the lords of the Vale speak of me as sensible and patient, if the Citadel calls me dutiful, if the faith calls me pious, yes. They may choose me precisely because they do not fear me." A ghost of a smile tugged at Royce's mouth. "Your father would not have recognized such talk in his daughter." "No," Sansa said, "but he would have recognized the need to protect his people from distant madness." Royce blew out a breath. "You ask me to risk my voice in the Vale on the chance that your southern game bears fruit. I could say no." "You could," she agreed, "and Peter Baelish would find someone else to whisper for him, someone less honorable, someone who might think his path lies in making Cersei stronger, not weaker." At that, Royce's jaw tightened. His dislike of Baelish was an open wound. "And if I say yes?" he asked. "Then, when the North and the Vale are asked to recognize a new ruler in the South," Sansa said softly, "your voice will have helped choose who that ruler is. We have seen what happens when others choose for us. I don't care to see it again." Silence stretched. The sound of a log collapsing in the hearth sent a flurry of sparks into the air. At last, Yohn Royce nodded once, sharply. "Very well. I will speak to the Septons under my protection. I will tell them to look to their sermons, their parables, to remind the folk that no one, not even a queen, stands above the gods' judgment." "Thank you, my lord," Sansa said. He held her gaze a heartbeat longer. "You play a dangerous game, Lady Sansa," he said. "More dangerous in its way than your brother's. At least he knows where his enemies stand." So do I, Sansa replied. They sit in the Red Keep and think the north too far to reach them. She let that settle, then turned to Wolkan. Maester, you will make copies of the Citadel's account with additions, she said. Statistics of the dead, names of houses extinguished. You will send them to every lord who lost kin in the September. And with them you will enclose reflections, questions they might wish to put to their septons. Wolkan bobbed his head. At once, my lady. As they bent to the work of choosing names and seals and routes, Sansa felt the hall shifting around her. Not in its stones or banners, but in the way the air moved. Once, letters sent from Winterfell had been petitions, promises, declarations of fealty. Now, with each scroll Wolkan rolled and sealed, with each name Royce intoned, Sansa felt something else being born. Not rebellion, not yet an argument, she thought. A case. One that would be heard from 100 pulpits before it ever reached a single throne room. If war was a hammer, this would be water. It would seep. It would wear away. And no one could say, later, that it was the North who first called for Cersei's blood. The gods would at night belong to the old gods and the wind. Even the guards avoided it when darkness fell, muttering of ghosts and the eyes in the heart tree. Sansa had once feared those eyes too, when she was small and the carved face seemed always to be watching. Now she sought them. Snow muffled her steps as she crossed the clearing. Her breath smoked in the air. Above her, the stars were pale pinpricks in the black, the weirwood's branches clawing at them like a great white hand. She sank to her knees before the tree and felt the cold bite even through her thick skirt. For a moment, she only listened, to the creak of ice on the pool, to the sigh of branches, to the distant, muted thud of a hammer from some late-working smith. "Father," she said at last, voice barely more than a thread. "If you can hear me." The words felt foolish, childish. If Ned Stark's spirit lingered anywhere, it was not in this tree. It was in the memories of the men who had followed him south, in the stories told about him by those who had loved him, in his children. Yet it comforted her to imagine him listening. "I am doing something you would not like," she continued, "or perhaps you would not understand. I don't know." She folded her hands in her lap. They looked older than she remembered, the knuckles more pronounced, faint scars tracing her skin where ropes and hard winters had left their marks. "When you went to King's Landing, you believed the truth would be enough," she said. "You thought that if you showed the king his wife's sins, he would act, that men would keep their oaths because they said them before the gods. You were wrong." The wind stirred, sending a handful of red leaves skittering across the snow. One landed on her sleeve, startlingly bright. "I believed in songs," she said. "I thought knights were all like the ones in my books, that queens were noble, that Jonquil and Florian would always find one another. I was wrong too." Her throat tightened. She swallowed against it. "You died because you trusted the wrong people. I lived because I learned to stop trusting." She lifted her gaze to the weirwood's face. Its eyes seemed to run with blood in the moonlight. "Now I am asking others to trust a story they do not know I am telling. I am letting them think the gods themselves condemn their queen. I am using their fear, their grief." A gust shook snow from the branches above, pattered down around her like soft applause. "I know it is wrong," she whispered, "or at least not right. You would have said so. Mother would have said so." Yet when she thought of Cersei on the Iron Throne, of the September's green fire, of Tommen's broken body and the screams of the small folk, something hard in her refused to yield. "She will not stop," Sansa said. "You know that. Men like Joffrey do not stop until someone forces their hands from what they clutch. Cersei is worse. She has lost everything and still she claws upward. She will burn 100 more cities if it keeps her aloft for another day." The words came faster, sharper, until her breath steamed with them. "I will not let hers be the only story," she said. "If there must be lies, and there must in this world, then let mine be gentler. Let them bring fewer graves. I would rather trick the lords into choosing someone new than kill them to make them bend." She closed her eyes. For a moment, She remembered kneeling here as a child, asking the gods to make Jory smile at her, to make Robb stop teasing, to make her mother forget she had tracked mud through the hall. Those prayers had felt as though they spiraled up, light and foolish. This one settled like lead at the base of her skull. "Judge me," she whispered, "if you must. Watch me. But do not turn your face away from the north again. Not while she holds the south in her fist." The heart tree said nothing. The wind moved through its branches like a sigh. Sansa rose slowly, knees numb. As she turned to go, the moon broke through a thin veil of cloud and lit the far wall of the godswood, where the faint outlines of children's carvings marked the stone. Wolves, swords, a crude, crooked crown. She touched it as she passed, her gloved fingers brushing the uneven cuts. "I do not want it," she said very softly. Not in the way she did. A lie, perhaps, or only half of one. She did not know. What she wanted, more than the cold glory of steel and song, was a realm that did not devour girls like the one she had been. If that required a crown, so be it. Morning brought a brittle, blue-tinged light and a sky as hard as old steel. The wind knifed through cloaks and leather, driving men to hunch their shoulders and stamp their feet. On the gatehouse, Sansa stood straight, her hair pinned tightly against the gusts, her cloak snapping at her heels. Below, in the yard, boys ran with baskets held above their heads. The ravens croaked and flapped in their wicker prisons, black eyes bright. Maester Wolkan moved among them with surprising briskness, checking bindings, murmuring, adjusting wax seals on the rolled messages that would be tied to claw and leg. "It will be done soon, my lady," he called up to her. "We must choose carefully. We have only so many birds. Enough to reach the Vale, the Riverlands, White Harbor, the Neck, Old Town," she said. "And a few for places in between where tongues wag more loudly than most." "Aye," Wolkan nodded. Jon Royce stood at the foot of the steps, his fur-trimmed cloak pulled tightly around him. He looked up at her with an expression she could not quite read. Respect, perhaps. Wariness. A soldier's doubt in battles he could not see. "You could do all this from a warm chamber," he rumbled when she descended to join him. "It's no business of a lady to freeze her nose off watching birds." "That is where you are wrong, my lord," Sansa said. "A lady's business has always been what happens after the ravens fly. We simply did not choose the messages before." He snorted, unwillingly amused. They watched as Wolkan and his assistants began to release the birds one by one. Each raven burst upward in a flurry of wings, shook itself as if shedding the cold, then arrowed toward the open sky. South mostly, some east, none north. "It begins then," Royce said. "No," Sansa said. "This is not a beginning. This is an answer. Cersei began it when she lit the wildfire. I am only redirecting the flames." Sounded glib put like that. She knew it. The knowledge sat on her tongue like ash. She thought of Jon, far beyond the walls, walking the circuit of Winterfell's outer defenses with Davos and Tormund. He would not understand this, not truly. His war was simple in its horror. The dead rose. They must be stopped. There was no room for sermons and whispers in the face of ice demons. All the more reason someone else must mind the other war, the one that would decide whether the living had a realm worth saving when it was done. "Will you tell him?" Royce asked, as if plucking the thought from her mind. "In time," she said, "when there is something to show him, when this is more than parchment and hope." Another raven soared upward, beating its way into the wind. Sansa tracked its flight until it became a dot, then nothing. "The Citadel will think these are treatises sent in good faith," she said quietly. "They will argue over them in their towers, write counter-arguments, send their own letters. Lords will read them and nod and frown. Septs will hum with debate. It will be slow. Wars often are," Royce said. "The ones that matter." He had seen too many, she knew. The lines around his eyes were not all from laughter. "You are certain this is the path?" he asked. "No," Sansa said. "I am certain there is no path that does not leave blood behind. This is simply the one I can live with, The last of the ravens burst free, beating its wings so close above her head that she felt the wind of it. For a moment, the bird's shadow crossed her face, darkening her vision. Then it was gone, and the sky was again a pale, cold blue. She drew in a deep breath, the air burning her lungs. "Let them talk," she whispered, more to herself than to Royce. "Let them question. Let them wonder if their queen will bring more fire." Words, she thought, were not so different from snow. One flake meant nothing. 1,000, 1,000,000 reshaped the world. The tavern in Gulltown was a world away from Winterfell. Low-ceilinged, smoky, thick with the sense of fish stew and spilled ale. A fire crackled in the hearth, fighting the damp that crept up from the harbor. Outside, the sea muttered against the piers. Inside, voices muttered over dice and gossip. The bard stood atop a rickety table near the center of the room, his boots planted wide for balance. He wore a cloak patched at elbows and knees, a lute scarred by years of hard travel. His hair, once perhaps a fine chestnut, was threaded with gray. He strummed a chord and launched into the final verse of his song. And the queen on her throne, made of sharpened old spears, burned septs, burned her kin, burned the faith and their tears. But the gods, they don't sleep, and the north, it remembers a red-haired young lady who walked through their embers. A few of the drunks laughed, slapping the tables. One shouted something rude about queens and fire, but others only shifted uneasily, eyes darting toward the doorway, as if expecting gold cloaks to burst through. There were none in Gulltown, not in force, but fear of King's Landing ran far. "Sing that bit again," a woman near the front called. Her hands were red from gutting fish all day, her nails rimmed with salt. "About the queen burnin' her own." The bard grinned and obliged, his fingers nimble on the strings. "Burned septs, burned her kin." "That's not right, that," muttered a man hunched over a tankard near the wall. His beard was shot with white, his hands scarred. "'Tain't natural, a mother killin' her own. Mad, I say." "Hush, Rolf," his neighbor hissed. "You want trouble? The Crown's men hear you." "The Crown's men can stuff their ears with rushes," Rolf retorted. "I lost a nephew in that September, I did. Good lad. Went down to serve in the kitchens o' the capital, send a bit back home. Now he's naught but smoke. And the queen's sittin' on her spike throne as if it's all the same as a bit o' spilled milk." At a corner table, a thin man in a plain wool cloak listened without seeming to. He kept his eyes on his ale, but his fingers tapped a slow rhythm against the mug. When the bard's song ended and the tavern erupted into scattered applause and argument, he rose, dropped a copper into the bard's hat, and slipped outside. The air was colder there, salt-laden. Ships bobbed in the harbor, their masts a forest of dark lines against the dimming sky. Gulls cried overhead. The thin man made his way up the twisting street to a modest boarding house. In his room beneath the eaves, he drew out a small, carefully folded square of parchment. The seal had been broken days ago, the wax tucked safely away. He did not need to reread the letter to remember its instructions, but he did anyway. "Abbot, listen," it said, in a hand that might have been anyone's. "Listen and write and send back what you hear of the Queen and the September. Of hunger, of fear, of any tales told of a northern girl who survived lions." He smiled faintly. The song was catching on faster than he'd expected. He sat, took up quill and ink, and began to write. In White Harbor, a dockworker spoke openly of Cersei's madness, he noted. In the Manderley kitchens, a scullion repeated a tale of green fire and screams. Now, in Gulltown, a bard sang verses that cast the queen as a butcher in silk, and the people listened. They were careful, afraid, but they listened. As for the northern girl, the red-haired young lady had drawn a different sort of murmur. Sympathy, perhaps. Curiosity. No name yet. That would come later. He sanded the note, folded it, and sealed it with cheap wax from a travel candle. The sign he pressed into it was one he had used 100 times, for 100 clients. A simple knot. It meant nothing, which was precisely why it meant what it did. Tomorrow he would find a raven. For tonight, he lay down on the narrow bed and listened to the distant crash of waves, thinking of Winterfell. He had never been there. He had never met Sansa Stark, but he had seen what Cersei's fire had done. If a girl in the far north wished to turn words against the woman who ruled them all, he was content to help stitch the tapestry. In Old Town, the ravens came like a shower of black hail, beating their wings against the high windows of the Citadel. Novices scrambled with nets and leather gloves, cursing and yelping as beaks snapped at their fingers. Above them, the high tower's beacon pulsed its slow, steady light across the dark. Maester Corran had long ago lost the nimbleness to chase birds. He dispatched a boy to do it and remained in his narrow study, where the air smelled always of vellum and dust. His fingers, knotted with age, traced the edge of a map as he waited. From the north Archmaester, the novice panted when he returned, a raven's message clutched in his chapped hands. Mark of Winterfell, and there was another with no clear sigil. Only this. He held out a second scroll. The wax seal was plain, pressed with a generic knot. "Leave them," Corran said. When the boy had gone, he took up the Winterfell message first. Duty, then curiosity. The first was polite, measured, written in the tidy, unremarkable hand of a castle maester. It relayed, with due solemnity, news the Citadel already knew: the fall of the Boltons, the return of the Stark name to Winterfell, the crowning of a king in the north. There was a line, near the end, requesting clarification on certain theological implications of the Great September's destruction. Corran's gaze snagged there. The second message was shorter, anonymous. It spoke not in the Citadel's neutral phrases but in the language of the Septs, of sin and retribution, of oaths broken and blood crying out for justice. It quoted, quite cleverly, from half a dozen holy texts, stitching them together in a way that left little doubt as to the writer's view. A queen who burns the house of the gods cannot claim their favor, it concluded. To suffer such a ruler without question is to partake in her crime. Corran sat back, the parchment rustling in his hands. He had seen this sort of thing before, in his youth. Letters that swept through the realm like summer storms, stern and pious, calling kings to account. They sometimes led nowhere. Sometimes they led to wars. His eye went back to the first scroll. A simple inquiry on the surface. What did the Citadel make of a ruler who had destroyed the September that crowned her? Did precedent exist? Were there records? He could ignore them. He could file them away and go on with his work on barley yields and ship construction. Instead, he found himself rising, joints creaking, and reaching for a different shelf. A treatise on the faith's role in coronations. A dusty, seldom-read history of Maegor the Cruel. A collection of sermons written in the days after the defiance of Duskendale. He brought them to his desk and opened them beneath the lamp's glow. Someone in the north, it seemed, wished the Citadel to think on these things. Someone with a keen understanding of how such thoughts could spread. "Very well," Maester Corran murmured, dipping his quill in ink. "Let us think." He began to draft a response. Neutral, of course, academic, but it did not take much imagination to see how his careful words might be read by a troubled lord in the Reach or a pious lady in the Stormlands. How they might be quoted in sermons. How they might be twisted into something sharper. As he wrote, questions layered upon questions. And far to the north, unbeknownst to him, a woman with auburn hair sat in a stone hall, waiting for precisely this. Snow had begun to creep beneath the doors, no matter how well the servants stuffed them with rags. The great hall's fires burned high, but cold still settled in the stones. Men wrapped their hands around mugs of mulled wine, warming their fingers and their tongues. Jon was away, riding the circuit of the smaller holdfasts to see their stores with his own eyes. In his absence, the hall looked to Sansa. She sat in the high-backed chair beneath the direwolf banner, its carved arms worn smooth by centuries of Stark hands. To her right, an empty seat waited for Jon. To her left, Lord Royce sat like a bronze statue brought in from the Godswood, his gaze sweeping the gathered men and women. Maester Wolkan stood near the hearth, scroll in hand. "From Lord Tarly, my lady," he said, "by way of Old Town. Mentions the Queen." "Read," Sansa said. Wolkan cleared his throat. "And though my loyalty to the Iron Throne remains steadfast, I confess to unease at the manner in which the late king met his end. The gods alone know the hearts of men and queens, yet it is difficult to reconcile the destruction of so holy a place with their will. My household septon has taken to preaching on the dangers of pride in rulers. I would value the Citadel's guidance on these matters." A low murmur ran through the hall. Tarly was no friend of the North. That he wrote thus even in private correspondence. Another, from Lady Staunton of Rook's Rest, Wolkan continued. "She writes to her cousin in White Harbor, and the small folk whisper that our queen wears a crown of ash, and that each step she takes leaves a print of fire. I do not know what to say when they ask me if the mother watched as the September burned. I have no answers." The murmurs grew. Sansa saw men shifting, exchanging glances. Some looked uneasy, others, those whose kin had fallen in southern wars, looked grimly satisfied. "There are more, my lady," Wolkan said. "From the Riverlands, the Stormlands, even one from the Westerlands itself, though that one is cautious." "Summarize," Sansa said. "We do not need every word." He did. Doubts, couched in different phrases, different hands. Questions posed to maesters and septons. Reports of uneasy sermons, of small shrines newly popular, of songs like the one sung in Gulltown making their way upriver. None mentioned Sansa. None mentioned the North as the source of their unease. The doubts seemed to have sprung up like mushrooms after rain. "So they don't like their queen much," grunted Lord Glover from his bench. "Good. Their business, not ours." "It is our business if their chaos spills north," Sansa said. "A realm divided cannot stand when the dead come knocking." The hall stilled at that. Even talk of distant politics could not wholly drown the looming shadow of winter. Jon Royce leaned toward her. "You have your cracks," he murmured, low enough for only her to hear. "The stone is not yet broken." "I do not want it broken," she murmured back. "I want it reshaped." Aloud she said, "We will not ride south. Not for this. Our war remains beyond the wall. But we will watch, listen, and when the time is right, we will be ready to speak to those who seek another path." "And if they don't?" Glover demanded. "If they cling to their mad lioness all the same?" "Then we have lost nothing," Sansa said. "We have only read letters and kept our counsel." Royce's gaze flicked to her, approving. She knew she was lying. A little. They had risked something. Their hands, however carefully gloved, were not clean of this. If the South tore itself apart in argument and unrest, some of that would be the North's doing. But if the South tore itself apart in war instead, how many more letters would there be? How many more names never read aloud because there was no one left to write them? Sansa rose, signaling the end of the reading. "Send replies where they are required," she told Wolkan. "Cautious as befitting the North. Express sympathy for their troubles. Remind them that winter comes for us all, and that only unity will see us through." Wolkan bowed and moved to gather the scrolls. As the hall began to break into smaller knots of conversation, Sansa slipped away, her footsteps sure on the worn stone. She did not go to her chamber. Instead, she climbed the tower steps to the roof walk, each breath frosting in the air before her. The night sky yawned vast and cold above, the stars sharp as glass. Far below, the yard burned with torchlight. The Raven's tower loomed to her left, a darker blot against the dark. She put her hands on the parapet and looked south. Somewhere beyond that endless dark lay Cersei Lannister, wrapped in silk and steel and fear. "Do you hear them yet?" Sansa whispered into the wind. The doubts? The questions? Silence answered. No matter. She was patient. Cersei had shown the world one kind of queen, the kind whose rule arrived in a flash of green fire and blood. Sansa would show them another, not a dove, not innocent, but deliberate, measured. One day, when the lords of Westeros gathered to decide their fate, she meant for them to be already half convinced that her hand on the realm would be the least terrible of the choices before them. The cold sank into her bones and stayed there, but Sansa did not move. Down in the yard, a gate creaked. Voices drifted up. A guard changing shift, a groom leading a horse. The sounds of a living castle, stubborn against the dark. She thought of other walls, other nights. The Red Keep, looming over a city that had never felt truly hers. Its walls had been red even before they were washed in smoke. She remembered standing on a balcony with Cersei as the city's torches flickered below. "If you ever find yourself alone," Cersei had murmured, in a tone that might have been almost kind, "remember that no one will pity you because you are good. They will only eat you slower." At the time, the words had terrified her. Now she saw them for what they were. A truth wielded like a cudgel. "I am not afraid of being eaten anymore," Sansa said into the night. "I have teeth of my own." The admission tasted strange, but not bitter. Cersei had never imagined Sansa might one day stand on a different wall in a different kingdom, considering not how to survive the Queen's cruelty, but how to undo her without burning the world down around them both. Yet here she was. Behind her, the torch guttered, its flame bending in the wind. Ahead, the darkness stretched, unbroken. It would not last. Somewhere in the south, candles burned in tower rooms where lords and ladies read the letters the ravens had carried. Somewhere in the Reach, a plump-handed septon rewrote his sermon at the last moment, adding a sharper word about rulers who forgot their place beneath the gods. Somewhere in the Westerlands, a minor knight wondered, for the first time, if the lioness on the throne might bring ruin to more than her enemies. And in Old Town, a maester with ink-stained fingers drafted a treatise that would, once copied and sent, be read aloud in halls from the arbor to the Dreadfort. Sansa closed her eyes and pictured it. The slow, invisible spreading of doubt. No banners unfurled, no horns sounded. Only conversations at supper tables and in market squares. Only prayers murmured a little more fervently for deliverance from a queen no longer entirely trusted. This, she thought, was what it meant to move the realm without armies. It was not as satisfying as a clean victory on a battlefield might have been. There would be no songs sung of ravens and letters, not at first. No one would praise the tedium of waiting, of watching, of nudging. But she did not crave songs. Not anymore. She wanted results. "Let her feel it," Sansa whispered. "Let her wake and know that the world she thought hers is slipping grain by grain between her fingers." The wind snatched her words away and carried them south. She lingered until her cheeks burned and her toes went numb. Only then did she turn, pausing for a moment to rest her hand on the cold stone of the parapet. "This is only the first step," she told herself. "The story is not finished. Claims must be forged, alliances woven, proof gathered." Her mind turned to Edmure Tully, to the shattered Riverlands, to the legalities men like Stannis had once obsessed over, to all the other tools she would need if this was to end not in chaos but in a crown on someone else's head. Perhaps her own. She did not shy from the thought now. She met it squarely. "If I must," she said quietly to the snow and the stars, "I will sit on that throne, not for love, not for glory, for safety, for an end to women like Cersei deciding the fates of girls like I was." She left the parapet then and stepped back into the stairwell's narrow, torchlit confines. The door closed behind her with a heavy thud, shutting out the wind. In the darkness of the stair, the echoes of her own footsteps sounded like someone else's for a moment. A queen's, perhaps, descending toward a hall of waiting lords. Then the illusion faded, and she was Sansa Stark again, moving through the bones of the only home that had ever truly been hers. The letters had flown. The whispers had begun. The game was in motion, and somewhere, deep in the Red Keep, Sansa hoped that Cersei Lannister, for all her steel and spite, felt the faintest, most unfamiliar sensation of all. That of the ground shifting beneath her feet, not from an explosion of wildfire, but from the silent, relentless erosion of a story turning against her. Davos Seaworth still carried the sea in his voice. Even wrapped in northern furs, with snow melting in his beard, there was something of salt spray and ship's decks about him. He sat awkwardly in the carved chair near the hearth, as if expecting it to pitch beneath him at any moment. Sansa listened as he spoke of the south. Stannis Baratheon was many things, Davos said, turning a folded, much-creased parchment over in his hands. Soft-hearted was never one of them, but he cared about laws, about lines of succession. Too much, some would say. He marched on my family's home because of those lines of succession, Sansa said. There was no bitterness in it, only a fact laid on the table beside the others. Davos agreed. He did, and that was wrong. I know that now, and I won't pretend otherwise. His weathered face tightened. But the things he had his maester right. They're still true, whatever kind of man he was. He pushed the parchment toward her. Sansa picked it up carefully. The ink was faded in places, smeared in others where damp had gotten in. The hand was neat, the language stiff and precise. It spoke of Robert's line, of the illegitimacy of Cersei's children with her brother, of how that made Stannis the rightful heir once Robert fell. Her eyes skimmed familiar words. Bastardy, incest, treason. She had heard whispers of all this in King's Landing as a girl. She had not understood the weight of it then. Now each line felt like the edge of a blade. Stannis is dead, she said quietly. Whatever claim he had died with him. Maybe, Davos said, but the reasoning doesn't die. Not if others take it up. The Citadel, the Faith, lords who still care about such things. King Tommen's claim, Queen Myrcella's before him, Joffrey's before her, all rested on lies. And now Cersei Lannister sits the throne with no husband, no child king to hide behind, no Baratheon blood at all. Sansa folded the parchment again, more gently than he had. Then by that argument the throne is empty, she said. Davos said, empty, and up for every ambitious fool in the realm to squabble over, if they've the men and stomach for it. Jon had no stomach for it, she knew. His eyes were turned north to the dead. Daenerys Targaryen, across the sea with her dragons. Sansa had heard enough rumors to know that woman's gaze was fixed on the Red Keep as well. There would be war if she made landfall. But what if the board changed before that? What if it's not left to the swords? Sansa asked. What if those who care about such laws are given something new to argue about? Something that lets them denounce Cersei as a usurper without needing to march. Davos frowned. What are you asking, my lady? I am asking, Sansa said, whether there are still men in the south who followed Stannis for his strictness. Men who would write to the Citadel, to the Faith, to each other, arguing that Cersei's coronation stands on no law at all, that the realm must choose again. Davos rubbed at the scarred stumps where his fingers ended. There are some, he said slowly, old knights, lords without big names. A few maesters who like to quote old cases more than was healthy. They won't raise banners, mind. But quills? That they'll lift gladly. Then I would like to speak to them, Sansa said. Through you. He blinked. Through me? You were his hand, Sansa said. In truth, if not in name. They trusted you enough to follow your king through siege and snow. If a letter comes from you, asking questions about law and legitimacy, they will answer. They will put their doubts into words. And once those words exist, they can be copied, Davos finished grimly. Spread, quoted, twisted, used, Sansa said, to build a case that even cautious men cannot ignore. Davos looked at her for a long moment. You sound like Stannis when he was planning a siege, he said finally, choosing walls to batter, not with rams but with words. I learned from many queens and kings, Sansa said. Joffrey showed me cruelty, Cersei terror. You and Jon show me duty. Stannis, through you, shows me something else. How much the law matters to men who think it's all they have. Davos huffed out a breath that might have been a laugh. All right, he said. I'll write. I'll ask those old goats what they think of a queen with no right to her crown. Heck, some of them will be glad of the excuse to argue. They might never see a battlefield again, but by the 7, They'll die with ink on their fingers. Sansa allowed herself a small smile. Then let's give them something worth the ink, she said. As Davos reached for quill and parchment, she sat back, the faded letter still warm in her hand. Empty, he had said, of the throne. Empty. An empty seat invited someone to fill it, but only if the realm could be made to see it that way. Snow fell in soft, lazy flakes, the sort that seemed harmless until you realized how deep they had piled at your boots. Brienne of Tarth brushed a dusting of it from her pauldron and adjusted the strap of her saddle. Her armor looked almost too bright for Winterfell, polished steel and blue enamel against the muted browns and grays of the north. Yet she had become part of the castle's rhythm as surely as any hound or stable boy. "You're certain of this road?" she asked. "The Riverlands are not kind in winter. Neither were they in summer," Sansa said. "But you've walked worse roads for me, my lady." Brienne's jaw tightened, as if the memory of a bloody camp and a burning man still lingered in the back of her throat. She had brought back pieces of Sansa's past from the Riverlands. News of Sandor Clegane, whispers of Arya, the hollowed-out shell of what had once been House Frey's pride. Now Sansa was sending her again, not to seek lost sisters or avenge old wrongs, but for something quieter, stranger. "Edmure Tully is still a captive at the Twins," Sansa said. "A Tully lord, rightful heir of Riverrun, held like a dog at his enemy's table. The Freys think no one cares for him. They are wrong." "And what do you want of him?" Brienne asked. "A rescue." "Not yet," Sansa said. "For now, I want his testimony." She handed Brienne a letter, folded thrice and sealed with wax stamped by the direwolf. Brienne took it as if it were a sword, carefully, respectfully, aware of its weight. "It says," she prompted, "that when Cersei Lannister sent her father to make peace at the Twins, the peace was bought in blood," Sansa said. "That Lord Walder Frey would never have dared the Red Wedding without the Lannisters' blessing. That oaths and guest right were trampled underfoot to keep a lion's grandson on the throne." The words were dry in her mouth, like dust. She had said them in her mind 1,000 times. Saying them aloud felt like prizing up a scab. "I was there," she went on more softly. "I saw the banners fall. I heard the music stop. They dressed it as a marriage and filled the hall with wine and light. And then they closed the doors." Brienne's eyes flickered. She had arrived too late to see it, but she had seen the aftermath. The blackened remains of the feast. The bodies. The wolves' heads. "If Edmure Tully signs his name to that account," Sansa said, regaining her composure, "if he swears that the Lannisters broke not only Northern honor but the oldest laws of guest right, then when the time comes, the realm will have to reckon with it. Even those who loved Tywin Lannister's order will have to admit that order was built on treachery." Brienne frowned. "And if he refuses? Then we learn something about the Riverlands we must remember," Sansa said. "But I do not think he will. He loved my Uncle Robb. He hates his cage. This is a way to strike a blow without raising a sword." Brienne slid the letter into her belt pouch. "You ask me to ride into a den of Freys and ask their captive to denounce the alliance that keeps them in the king's favor," she said. "Not with steel, but with ink." "Yes," Sansa said. "Go in the guise of a knight delivering condolences for Lord Walder's sons. They died at the hands of enemies unknown." Her eyes were cool. "It will flatter Lord Walder to be grieved, even falsely. While he crows, find Edmure. Put this in his hands. If he agrees, bring back his answer. If he cannot, remember every word he says about who was in that hall, who drank the toasts, who laughed as the blades were drawn." Brienne studied her, blue eyes clear and searching. "You are different," she said at last, "from the girl I swore to protect." "I know," Sansa said. Brienne hesitated, then bowed her head. "Then I will go," she said. "For you, for Lady Catelyn, for the oaths that were broken at that cursed table. Take Podrick Payne with you," Sansa added. "He knows the ways of the South, and he has a good memory. We may need that more than his sword." Podrick, hovering nearby with the horses, straightened as his name was spoken. He looked both proud and terrified. Brienne mounted, metal gleaming. Sansa stepped back, snow crunching under her boots. "Be careful," she said. "I will not send you into such danger again unless there is no other choice." Brienne gave her a small, awkward smile. "You say that as if the world ever gives us choices we like." Then she was turning her horse and riding for the gate, Podrick at her side. Sansa watched until they were lost in the white haze of the road south. Each person she sent out into that world felt like a piece of herself leaving Winterfell. Brienne, Davos, anonymous merchants, and bards. Threads in a web she could not see all at once, only feel in the occasional tug as news returned. If any were cut, she wrapped her arms around herself briefly, then forced her hands to still. This was the cost of playing a larger game. She would not look away from it. The twins smelled of river damp and old grease. Even in the upper chambers, the air never quite lost the chill of stone steeped in too many winters and too much spilled ale. Edmure Tully sat on a rickety chair, the chain at his ankle clinking whenever he shifted. His beard had gone grayer since the last time Brienne had seen him, and the lines around his eyes were deeper. But there was still something open in his face, a softness that imprisonment had not entirely blunted. "So my Uncle Walder has friends in the north now," he said bitterly, nodding toward the door where a Frey guard stood half listening, half drowsing. "Come to pay respects for his loss. Which one was it? Black Walder? Lothar? There are so many. It's hard to keep track of who's dead and who's plotting." Brienne sat opposite him, her own posture relaxed in the practiced way of someone pretending to be unthreatening. "I came on behalf of Lady Sansa Stark of Winterfell," she said, "to offer condolences and to speak with you, Lord Edmure. She sends this." She slid the folded letter across the table. The guard glanced over, glanced away. Letters were not swords. They did not interest him. Edmure hesitated before reaching out. His fingers brushed the wax seal, lingering on the direwolf. "I thought Sansa was dead," he said quietly. "Last I heard, she had been married off to the imp and then vanished from King's Landing like smoke." "She lived through that smoke," Brienne said. "And worse, she is Lady of Winterfell now. Her brother Jon is king in the north. The Boltons are gone." Something like hope flickered in Edmure's eyes, quickly smothered by caution. He broke the seal with his thumbnail and read. Silence stretched. The guard shifted, sighed, spat on the flagstones. Brienne watched Edmure's face change as he read. Anger flared there. Shame. Grief. By the time he reached the end, his mouth was a hard line. "She wants me to write it down," he said. "To tell the world what happened that night. As if the world doesn't already know." "The world knows pieces," Brienne said. "Songs and rumors. Lord Walder's version. The Lannisters' silence. She wants something that can't be waved away as a northern tale." Edmure laughed, a short, humorless sound. "Nothing stops a man like Tywin Lannister waving things away," he said. "Except death, I suppose, and even then his shadow hangs longer than most." "Tywin is dead," Brienne reminded him. "Cersei Lannister is queen now. The Great September is gone. The Faith is wounded. The Reach is leaderless. The realm is unsettled." "And Sansa means to unsettle it further?" Edmure asked. "She means to give those who are already uneasy a truth to hold on to," Brienne said. "That their queen's house rose on broken oaths and murdered guests. That they turned a wedding into an abattoir to keep a crown." He flinched at the word wedding. His mind had gone, Brienne knew, to his own. To a music that had not stopped, an exit he had not taken, chains and humiliation. "If I sign my name to this," he said, looking down at the letter again, "Lord Walder will skin me and wear my hide to supper. The Lannisters will deny it. Or worse, they'll remember I exist and decide I'm more trouble than I'm worth." "And if you do nothing?" Brienne asked. "Then I rot here until the twins fall into the river," Edmure said. "Or until the Freys decide I'm one mouth too many." He pushed a hand through his hair, tugging at it until his scalp must have hurt. The guard yawned loudly. Outside, a distant shout and the clatter of hooves on stone rang through the keep. When I was Lord of Riverrun, I thought the worst thing I'd ever do was loose an arrow at the wrong moment, Edmure said. Miss a mark. Shame myself. I never imagined I'd sit by while my sister's son was butchered under my uncle's roof. That my name would be tied to that night forever. He looked up at Brienne, eyes bright with an anger that had nowhere to go. Tell me, he said, if I sign this, if I swear that Tywin Lannister and Walder Frey conspired to murder their guests, does Sansa Stark have some army hidden away to make use of it? Will Riverrun rise? Will the North march? No, Brienne said. It was a cruelty and a kindness to be so blunt. She will not march, not while the dead gather. She will send letters. She will make sure this testimony finds its way into the hands of maesters and septons and lords who still pretend the Red Wedding was an unfortunate necessity. Then what good is it?
Edmure demanded.
It is the difference, Brienne said, between a whisper and a witness. Edmure stared at her. You sound like my father, he said at last. He always believed in oaths, in putting one's name to the truth, even when it cost. He looked back down at the letter. Quill, he called. The guard grunted. What for? To write my wife, Edmure lied smoothly. Or shall I tell Lord Walder you denied his son-in-law ink? The guard swore, shuffled out, returned with a crude pot of ink and a goose feather. He slammed them down on the table and resumed his post. Edmure dipped the quill. For a moment the tip hovered. Then slowly he began to write. Names, places, the date of the wedding, the toasts made, the moment doors shut. The way the musicians had shifted to the Reigns of Castamere, the Lannister lion on Ser Adam Marbrand's cloak, the look on Walder Frey's face. Brienne watched his hand tremble and steady. When he was done, he signed his name, Edmure Tully, Lord of Riverrun. He blew on the ink, then folded the page and slid it across to Brienne. Take it, he said. Give it to Sansa. Tell her I'm sorry we failed her brother as we did. Brienne tucked the testimony away, the weight of it heavier than steel. Outside, the river rushed on beneath the bridge of the twins, heedless of oaths and crowns. The throne room felt larger now that so many had died. The long carpet leading up to the Iron Throne was a river of crimson down which no one walked lightly. The high windows let in more light than Cersei sometimes liked, making the dust motes visible in every shaft of sun. Once, the room had echoed with the murmur of courtiers, the rustle of silk, the scrape of chairs. Now, silence sat in the galleries like a crow. Cersei Lannister read the letter Qyburn had placed in her hand. Her fingers crumpled the parchment slightly at the edges. Crown of Ash, she repeated, voice flat. Cursed by the gods, the queen who burned the mother's house and made orphans of all Westeros. She lowered the letter and looked down at the semicircle of advisors brave, or foolish, enough to attend her counsel. Qyburn stood close, pale and eager. A lean Crownlands lord whose name she could never quite remember fidgeted with the hilt of his sword. A plump merchant in rich cloth dabbed sweat from his forehead. The rest were shadows of what had been. A master of ships whose fleet had been half destroyed, a justiciar whose courts sat half empty. They sing it in taverns from Maidenpool to Lannisport, Qyburn said mildly. My little birds report the verses change from town to town, but the gist remains the same. And you bring me this filth because? Cersei asked. Because it spreads your grace, Qyburn said, as do these. He gestured to the stack of messages on the table before the throne. Letters from lesser lords to their maesters, questions from the faith's remnants in the countryside, all wondering what it means when a queen destroys the very September where kings are crowned. A murmur rose and fell among the council. Cersei stood. The old swords of the throne shifted under her, razor edges catching at the embroidered lions on her gown. She barely felt it. Do they forget? She said, her voice carrying easily in the vast hall. What that September had become? A nest of sparrows and traitors, men who dared imprison their queen. who paraded me naked through my own city, who humiliated my son. No one met her eyes. I rid the realm of a nest of vermin, she continued. If the gods object, they are welcome to strike me down. Until then, I will assume they approve. Of course, your grace, the merchant babbled. Of course. Yet, perceptions. Perceptions? Cersei turned her gaze on him. He flinched. Small folk are easily swayed, he stammered. Their bellies are empty. Their faith is bruised. When septons begin to whisper that the queen's soul is black with sin, they listen. Then we silence the septons, Cersei said. Close the smaller septs. Bring their priests to heal. Any who preach against the crown will find their tongues removed. Qyburn inclined his head. I can see to that, your grace. The city watch is eager for direction. And the letters? Cersei asked, flicking the parchment in her hand. Qyburn's eyes gleamed. We could trace them, perhaps. Find which raven towers send the most troublesome words. Make examples of their lords. She considered it. The thought of lesser men, somewhere in the mist of the Reach or the dust of the Stormlands, sitting at cozy tables and questioning her right to rule, tasted like bile. Do it, she said, quietly. No grand executions. Just accidents, bandits, illness. Let them wonder if the gods are answering their own prayers. Very good, your grace, Qyburn murmured. Down the line, the Crownland's lord cleared his throat. Might I be permitted to speak, Majesty? You're doing it already, Cersei said. He flushed. Only this, your grace. Some of the letters do not call for your immediate downfall. They inquire. They express unease. They ask if there might be some way for your grace to demonstrate piety. To hold a public ceremony of atonement, perhaps, or to reaffirm your dedication to the faith. Cersei stared at him. For a heartbeat, she saw herself as she had been on the steps of the Great September, foot cut on a shard of stone. The crowd's roar like a sea in her ears, shame, shame, ringing in time with each step, hands reaching, spittle on her skin. She would burn the city to its foundations before she walked those streets humbled again. No, she said very softly. I will not bow and scrape like a penitent child. I am the queen. The Lord paled. However, Cersei went on, her mind turning. If they want a show of piety, they shall have one. We will organize a feast, a celebration in the September's memory. There will be prayers, alms for the poor, bread and stew for every wretch in Flea Bottom. Let the singers compose new hymns to the mother and the warrior. We will parade through the city and let them cheer. Celebration of the September's memory, Qyburn repeated thoughtfully. How novel. Let them say what they like, Cersei said. They will see their queen feeding them, clothing them, building a new sept, smaller, but grand enough. They will sing a different song. And if they don't? The merchant dared to ask. Cersei smiled. Then we will know who does not appreciate the crown's generosity, she said, and deal with them accordingly. The council dispersed soon after, half relieved, half more afraid than when they'd entered. In the echoing emptiness of the throne room, Qyburn lingered. You feel it, don't you? He asked softly as she sat once more, the sword's cold points pressing into her back. Feel what? Cersei snapped. The way the wind has shifted, he said. Not yet a storm, but a breeze turning, ever so slightly, against your face. She closed her eyes for a moment. I have stood against storms before, she said. I will stand against this one. Let them whisper. Let them write. They are ants. I am the heel. Somewhere far to the north, ravens flew with more letters, more sermons, more songs. Cersei did not see them. Not yet. The hill where the Great September of Baelor had once stood was a scar now. Charred stones jutted from the earth like broken teeth. The great dome was gone, leaving only a jagged circle of blackening. Weeds already poked through the cracks where marble had cooled. The air still smelled faintly of old smoke and something else no one wanted to name. At the foot of the hill, A crude trestle table had been set up. Cauldrons bubbled over hastily built fires, ladling out thin stew and hunks of bread. A banner with the Lion of House Lannister hung limply on a nearby post, its colors dulled by soot. "Move along," barked a gold cloak, waving the line forward. "Plenty for all. Queen's generosity." Mara tightened her grip on her daughter's hand. Little Tessa clutched a chipped bowl to her chest, eyes wide as she took in the ruins above. "Was that where the gods lived?" the girl whispered. "They don't live in buildings," Mara said automatically. "They live in our hearts, yes, I know," Tessa muttered, rolling her eyes in a way that reminded Mara painfully of the child's dead father. "But that's where we went to talk to him." "Used to," said the man behind them in line. "Now we talk to empty air and hope the queen doesn't burn that too." Mara shot him a warning look, glancing at the gold cloaks. But the guard was busy shouting at a boy who tried to cut in line. "They say she did it herself," murmured the woman in front of them, voice low. "Lit the fire and watched it burn. The High Septon, the Tyrells, all of them. Good riddance to the sparrows." The man behind them spat. "They took my cousin's bread for their pieties. But the Tyrell girl, she was kind. The queen killed her too." "Keep your voice down," Mara hissed. "Do you want trouble?" "I've had trouble since the day the last war started," he growled. "What's one more heap on the pile?" At the front of the line, an old Septon ladled stew into bowls. His back was bent, his once white robes yellowed and mended. A simple 7-pointed star hung at his neck. "Blessings of the mother on you," he murmured to each person who passed. "Blessings of the crone. Blessings of the smith who gives us hands to work." Mara liked him. He spoke softly to the children and always made sure an extra scrap of bread found its way into their bowls. He never lectured the women about modesty or the men about gambling. "Next," he said, smiling as Tessa stepped up. "Ah, little lady, the gods smile when you eat, reminds them of the joy they meant for the world." "Did the queen make the gods angry?" Tessa blurted. "'Cause she burned their house?" The Septon's ladle paused mid-air. His eyes flicked to Mara, then to the sky, then back to the child. "The gods are slow to anger," he said carefully, "but they do not forget those who mock them." "That's enough," Mara said quickly. "Say thank you, Tess." The girl took her bowl wide-eyed. "Thank you." As they moved away from the table, Mara heard it. "Traitor," snarled a voice. A gold cloak was striding toward the Septon, 2 more at his heels. The old man straightened, brow furrowing. "Sire, you speak against the queen," the guard said. "Against her mercy. We've had reports." "I speak of the gods," the Septon replied. "If there will offends the queen, that is between her and them." The lead gold cloak grabbed him by the scruff of his robe. "You preach that she angered the gods," he said, "that they'll strike her down." "I preach that all men and women answer for their deeds," the Septon said, though his voice shook now. "Even queens, especially queens." "Blasphemy," the guard declared. "Take him." The crowd shifted. Some stepped back. Others pressed forward. "That's Septon Harn," someone whispered near Mara. "He baptized my boy. He never hurt anyone." "Quiet," someone else muttered. "They'll hear." Mara watched as the gold cloaks dragged the old man from behind the table. His feet scrabbled for purchase on the muddy ground. "Brothers, sisters," he called, voice cracking. "Remember the mother. Remember guessed right. Remember that the gods see." A mailed fist struck his mouth. Blood spattered the snow. Tessa whimpered. Mara pulled her close, hand over the child's eyes. "Back to your hovels," the guard shouted at the crowd. "Eat your stew and thank your queen you've got that much. Any who spread lies about her will join this fool in the dungeons. Or the black cells if you're unlucky." They hauled Septon Harn away. For a long moment no one moved. Then slowly the line reformed. Bowls were filled. Bread was taken. Children ate. Life went on because it had to, but the murmurs changed. "They hit him for saying the gods see," the man behind Mara muttered. "What does that tell you?" "That they're afraid," the woman ahead said. "You don't strike unless you feel something bite." "Afraid of what?" someone else whispered. "Of what they did up there," came the answer, soft as a prayer. "Of the gods. Of us." Mara said nothing. She only clutched her daughter, feeling the thin bones beneath her hands, and wondered which was worse. A queen who burned a September, or one who feared her own people enough to drag away a harmless old preacher in broad daylight. The solar smelled of tallow and old wood. Snow tapped against the windows, restless. On the long table, scrolls lay unfurled like pale skins, ink marching across them in neat, merciless lines. Sansa held Edmure Tully's testimony in her hands. "He names them both," she said. "Lord Walder Frey and Lord Tywin Lannister. Says they plotted together. That the signal to begin the slaughter came from the musicians, who had been paid by a Lannister man. That Lannister gold paid for Frey knives." "Everyone knows this," Peter Baelish said lightly. "Songs have been written, toasts made." "Songs are smoke," Davos said. "This is bone. A lord's name, a sworn account." Baelish's lips twitched. "Poetic, Ser Davos, if a bit grim." Jon Royce's hand came down on the table, making the candles jump. "Grim is what they did," he growled. "We all heard. Few of us had it written down so plain. Guessed right broken. Oath spat on. It would chill a man's blood if it didn't anger it more." Sansa set the parchment down with care. "Along with this, we have Maester Corrin's treatise from Old Town," she said, touching another scroll. "On the faith's role in coronations. On how kings and queens who defied the gods' laws were eventually corrected. Some of them corrected with swords," Davos noted. "Some with councils," Sansa said. "Great councils. Meetings of the lords to decide questions succession and legitimacy when the line is unclear." She looked up, meeting each man's eyes in turn. "Cersei's children were bastards," she said. "Born of her brother, not her husband. By Stannis Baratheon's reasoning, which the Citadel does not wholly reject, they were never rightful heirs. Tommen sat the throne on a lie. So too did Joffrey. My marriage to him, my betrothal. They were frauds in the eyes of the law." Baelish smiled thinly. "You sound almost pleased to discover your marriage never truly counted." "I am not speaking as a wronged wife," Sansa said. "I am speaking as someone who understands how men who care about laws will twist themselves to keep them. If the realm accepts that the Baratheon line is broken and that Cersei Lannister has no claim of blood, then by their own rules the throne is empty." "Empty things call to be filled," Royce said. "And to my ears, this talk sounds like you mean to be the one to fill it." Davos scratched at his beard. "Even if the throne's empty in the eyes of law, there are others with stronger claims. That Targaryen girl across the water. Some would still back a Baratheon bastard if you waved him in front of them." "Let them argue," Sansa said. "Let them debate who has the best right. That is the point. Not to have them all declare me queen on the spot. That would be absurd, but to pull their gaze away from Cersei. To make them speak, over and over, the words illegitimate and usurper when they speak of her. To make a great council seem not treason, but necessity." "And when that council is called?" Baelish asked, dark eyes gleaming. "Who stands before it? The Dragon Queen? A Baratheon boy dredged from some blacksmith's yard? You?" Sansa took a breath. "I will not ride at the head of an army," she said. "I will not burn cities. But if a council meets to choose a new ruler because the law and the faith demand it, then yes, I will let my name be spoken, not as a conqueror, as a compromise." Baelish laughed softly. "A compromise queen. How very northern of you." Royce snorted. "Compromises keep men from killing each other. You'd know that if you'd fought more battles yourself and started fewer from shadows." Davos leaned over the table, tapping one calloused finger on Edmure's testimony. "So we spread these," he said. "We make sure lords who lost kin at the twins see this letter. We make sure it finds its way to septons who can thunder about guest right from their pulpits. We send Stannis's arguments about bastardy to the Citadel. We let them chew on it. And we feed the right parts of their chewing back to others, Baelish added. A phrase here, a line there. Maesters are dreadful gossips when you give them something juicy. Sansa nodded. Every letter that questions Cersei's right to sit on that throne, she said. Every sermon that calls what she did at the September an offense to the gods. Each one is a stone removed from under her feet. And each one a stone you might stand on instead, Peter murmured. She met his gaze without flinching. If the realm must have a queen, she said. Better one who knows what it is to be crushed by that throne than another who only knows how to crush others with it. For a moment, something like genuine admiration flickered across Baelish's face. It was gone almost as soon as it appeared. I'll see to the discreet delivery of these tidings, he said. Some lords prefer their eyes opened in private, before they pretend surprise in public. Royce grunted assent. Davos nodded once. As they bent over the maps and names, assigning messengers in whispers and ink, Sansa felt the shape of it all clearer in her mind. The case against Cersei was no longer just outrage and grief. It was dates and signatures, laws and precedents. It was something that could be argued in hall and sept and tower without a single sword drawn. She would never again stand helpless while men decided her fate over her head. This time, when they spoke of queens and kings, her hand would be on the quill. The village sept was a small thing, barely larger than a barn. Its whitewashed walls were cracked, its roof patched with mismatched shingles. The statues of the seven were simple and worn, their faces smoothed by generations of hands. Once, the High Septon had walked in marble halls, his feet echoing on polished stone, his every step watched by painted eyes and golden icons. Now he sat on a plain bench, the rough wool of a common Septon's robe itching against his skin. The gods have a sense of humor, he murmured, untying yet another letter. The young men who attended him, Septon lads more used to mending thatch than interpreting Holy Writ, shifted nervously. Your Eminence, one began, then faltered at a glare. Forgive me, Master Herod. These letters, they grow more troubled. They do, the old man said. He had taken the name Herod when he fled the city, shedding the grandeur of his high holiness for the anonymity of a wandering priest. Those who still recognized him did so in whispers. The faith militant was gone, their zeal consumed in green fire. The faith's power in King's Landing had been snapped like a brittle bone. But the faith itself was not dead. It lived in the fears and hopes of those who wrote to him now. He spread the letters on the bench beside him. One from a Septon in the Reach, describing small folk who refused to enter their rebuilt chapel for fear it, too, might burn. One from a pious lady in the Stormlands, asking if she sinned by swearing fealty to a queen who had murdered the last High Septon and destroyed the house of the gods. One, anonymous, its hand disguised, quoting Maester Corrin's treatise on kings who lost their crowns after offending the divine. He picked up that last one again. A queen who has no lawful claim by blood, it read, and who compounded that sin by burning the September where her own father-in-law was crowned, cannot be considered anointed in truth. The oil on her brow is ash. The High Septon closed his eyes. He had seen many crowned heads in his time. Some had been cruel men, some foolish, some surprisingly humble. All had claimed the gods' favor. It had been his duty to anoint them, to murmur prayers as he dabbed oil on their brows. He had never anointed Cersei Lannister. She had taken the crown herself, in a hall he no longer recognized. Are they right? The younger Septon whispered. Did the queen sin beyond forgiveness? We are all beyond forgiveness, if we look too closely, the old man said. And yet the mother loves us still. That is the faith's burden, to hold both things at once. But can she rule? The other young man asked. If she made herself queen without the Seven's blessing? That is not a question for me alone, the High Septon said. It is a question for lords, for maesters, for every man and woman who bends the knee or does not. The faith may guide. It cannot command, not as it once thought it could. His fingers brushed another letter. This one from Gulltown, describing a septon dragged away for preaching that the gods watched the queen. "They are afraid," he said softly. "Those who rule in King's Landing. They strike at harmless men because they sense, dimly, that something has shifted under their feet." The younger septons exchanged glances. "What will you do?" one asked. The high septon looked up at the simple carved faces of the seven. The father with his scales, the mother with her arms open, the warrior with his sword. "I will write," he said. He reached for parchment and ink. "I have heard your questions," he wrote, in a hand that had signed edicts and indulgences. "I have wept with you for the loss of our great September. I have considered the scriptures, the histories, the examples of Maegor and others who defied the gods." He did not call for rebellion. He did not name Cersei usurper. But he wrote that rulers who offended the gods and the laws of men could not assume their anointing was secure forever. He wrote that there were times, rare but real, when the realm had gathered to choose anew. Great councils where lords and faith together decided who should wear the crown. He did not sign as High Septon. He signed as Herod, a humble servant of the seven. But those who received his letters would know, or suspect, or claim to, send copies to the septs in the larger towns. He told his young attendants. To Old Town, to Riverrun if any sept still stands there, to White Harbor and Gulltown. "Not to King's Landing?" one asked. "The red keep burns words as easily as it burns people," the old man said. "Let them hear of this secondhand. It will anger them more." He smiled faintly. "Sometimes," he added, "the gods answer prayers not with thunder, but with paper." At night, when the palace quieted and the wine wore off, the ghosts came. Cersei lay on her back, the silken sheets cool against her skin, and stared at the carved beams above. The candle on the bedside table had burned almost down to the holder, its stubby flame guttering with each draught that slipped under the door. She told herself the flickering shapes on the ceiling were just shadows, tricks of light. They looked like green fire. Tommen fell in her dreams, not always from the same place. Sometimes from the window she remembered all too clearly, his small body a pale blur against the blue. Sometimes from the steps of the September, tumble, tumble, tumble in his golden crown. Sometimes from her own arms, slipping through blood-slick fingers. She woke with her heart pounding, the taste of iron in her mouth. Tonight, it was not Tommen she saw falling when she closed her eyes. It was the High Sparrow, arms outstretched, his simple robes aflame. Marjorie Tyrell's face, shock frozen there as the explosion reached her. Loras on his knees, head bowed. She had killed them. She did not regret it. They had humiliated her, threatened her. They would have taken from her the only thing she had left then, her power. Better they burn than she disappear into a sparrow's cell. Yet the letters, the murmured reports from Qyburn's spies, the verses sung in taverns, they gnawed at the edges of her certainty. Crown of Ash, they called her. Queen of Cinders. Let them choke on their own words, she muttered into the empty room. Let them starve and see who feeds them. The feast she had planned would go ahead. Bread, stew, alms. A new sept's foundation stone laid. Parade. A show. They would love her, or they would fear her. Either was acceptable. Still, sleep did not come easily. She turned her head on the pillow and found herself staring at the shape of a chair by the window. In the near darkness, its high back and arms looked like a figure seated there. For a moment she saw a girl. A northern girl with auburn hair and eyes too wide. Sansa, she thought. She could not recall when last she had thought of that little bird. The child had fluttered away in the chaos after Joffrey's death, lost in the shuffle of accusations. Tyrion's vanished bride. She had assumed the girl dead, or married off to some minor lord in the Vale. Yet the shape in the shadows persisted, watching her, judging. You don't matter, Cersei told the phantom. You never did. You were a pretty toy. Nothing more. The shadow did not answer. Cersei squeezed her eyes shut. When she opened them again, the chair was only a chair. She sat up, swinging her feet to the floor. The stone was cold under her skin. She crossed to the window and pushed the shutters open. Outside, King's Landing sprawled under a thin winter moon, its roofs a patchwork of slate and tile. The black wound of the ruined September was visible even from here. "They hate you," a voice whispered in her mind. "They fear you. They pray for someone else. Let them," she said aloud. "Let them cry to their gods. The gods did nothing when my children died. I am the only justice this city has." Her reflection in the glass looked back at her. A woman more gaunt than she remembered, lines etched at the corners of her mouth, gold hair dulled with age and strain. A crown sat on a stand nearby, its points gleaming. She had paid for it with everything: her father, her children, her reputation, her very soul, some would say. She would not surrender it because of letters, because of whispers, because some fat lord in Old Town wrung his hands over scripture. "If they call a council," she murmured, a thought she had not allowed to fully form before. "If they dare, I will burn them too." The idea soothed her like wine. Yet even as she thought it, a memory rose, her father's voice, impatient. "Power resides where men believe it resides. No more, no less. If enough men stopped believing." She snuffed the candle with an irritated gesture and lay back down. Sleep came in fits and starts, punctuated by images of fire and falling and a girl's accusing eyes. Far to the north, that girl, grown now colder, sat awake as well, tracing lines on maps and letters. The game was being played in ink and in dreams as much as in steel. The Raven Tower was colder than the rest of Winterfell, even by northern standards. The stones seemed to hoard the night's chill, releasing it in slow breaths that puffed mist from the Ravenkeeper's mouth as he muttered to his charges. They croaked and shuffled, eyes like polished beads. "Hungry bastards, all of you," he grumbled, tossing a handful of grain. One bird, soot-black and keen-eyed, swooped down onto the ledge with a clatter of claws. A tube of leather hung from its leg, the wax seal on it marked with the faint impression of a crowned stag. The Ravenkeeper blinked. "Storm's End," he said, surprised. "Not seen that mark in a while." He reached for the bird, crooning nonsense to soothe it as he unfastened the message. The raven pecked at his glove anyway, offended by the indignity. "Another from the south?" came a voice from the stair. Sansa stepped into the tower, cloak pulled tight, breath ghosting in the cold air. "Aye, my lady," the Ravenkeeper said. "Stormlands. Strange enough they'd write at all with the world as it is." "Let me see," she said. He handed her the tube. She broke the seal and unrolled the scrap of parchment. The handwriting was sharp and impatient. "Lady Sansa Stark of Winterfell," it began. "Or whoever governs that place now." She read on. The letter came from a minor lord sworn to what remained of House Baratheon. He wrote of unrest in King's Landing, of a planned Feast of Atonement, the Queen meant to hold in memory of the Great September bread and alms. He scoffed. Parade of lies. They had received, he said, copies of arguments from Old Town suggesting Cersei's coronation was unlawful. They had heard the murmurs from septs and taverns that the gods had turned their faces from her. The Lord was no fool. He knew rebellion when he smelled it. "If such a council as your northern maesters whisper of is truly to be called," he wrote bluntly, "know that there are those in the Stormlands who would welcome it. We have lost too many sons to Lannister wars. But we will not raise swords, not unless the realm moves as one. We are tired." The word tired repeated in other hands in other letters. Sansa lowered the parchment, her heart beating faster in her chest. "They're listening," she said softly. "Not just grumbling. Listening." "You look as if you've seen a ghost," the Ravenkeeper said, bewildered. "Not a ghost," she murmured. "A door." She turned. "Maester Wolkan will want to see this," she said. "And Lord Royce, Ser Davos. Have someone send to them." The Ravenkeeper bobbed his head. As she descended the stairs, parchment clenched in her fist, the tower's cold gave way to the relative warmth of the hall below. Somewhere between one step and the next, a thought came, clear as if spoken aloud. If the Stormlands, fractured and weary, would consider a council. Who else might? The Reach, leaderless. The Riverlands, bleeding. The Westerlands, rich but guilty. A council would need pretext. Legitimacy. A call no one could ignore without seeming to scorn both law and faith. The High Septon's letters, Herod's quiet suggestions, could provide one half. The Citadel's treatises, the legalists' arguments, the testimonies of betrayed lords could provide the other. Sansa reached the bottom of the stairs and nearly collided with a breathless guard. "My lady," he gasped. "A visitor. At the gate." "Jon?" she asked automatically. "No, my lady. A girl. Says her name is Arya Stark." The world narrowed for a moment, the raven letter forgotten in her hand. Arya. Sansa's mind flashed images. A small girl with tangled hair and a sword too big for her. Father catching Arya practicing with a broomstick. The last sight of her on the steps of the September, shoving through the crowd as they pushed Sansa toward the waiting royal party. "Where is she?" Sansa asked, voice strangled. "In the yard," the guard said. The men didn't believe her at first, but she showed them something. A face. Sansa did not wait to hear more. She gathered her skirts and ran. The snow in the yard did not feel cold under her boots. Her heart beat in her ears louder than the clang of practiced swords and the distant bark of hounds. Near the entrance, a knot of men had gathered. They parted as she approached, revealing a figure at the center. Arya Stark stood there, thinner and harder than Sansa remembered, dressed in plain leathers beneath a travel-stained cloak. Her hair was cropped short. A sword, small and familiar, hung at her hip. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Arya's mouth twisted into that old, defiant half-smile. "Hello, Sansa," she said. "You're the Lady of Winterfell now, I hear." Emotion surged up in Sansa, too many colors at once. Relief, anger, guilt, joy. "You came home," she managed. "Not for long, maybe," Arya said. "I have names." Still, her eyes were dark, dangerous. Cersei's, Sansa thought. She looked down at the crumpled letter in her fist, then back at her sister. "Good," she said, surprising herself. "I might have a different use for your names." The chamber was small, tucked away off a side corridor near the old maid's quarters. Sansa had chosen it because the walls were thick and the door fit so tightly that no stray draft or whisper could slip through. Arya sprawled in an old chair by the hearth, boots muddying the faded rug. She handled needle the way other people handled nervous habits, letting her fingers rest on the hilt, testing the familiar give and wait. "So," Arya said, "you want to kill Cersei. About time." Sansa sat opposite her, hands folded in her lap. "I want to remove her," she said. "There's a difference." Arya snorted. "Not from where I'm sitting." "It matters," Sansa insisted. "If she dies by a knife in the dark, the Lannisters who remain will cry martyr. They'll say she was murdered by cowards. The realm will cling to her memory. It will look for someone like her to replace her." Arya's gaze sharpened. "And if she's removed another way, then she is not a fallen queen," Sansa said. "She is a mistake corrected." Arya tilted her head, studying her sister. "You sound like a maester," she said, "or one of those judges in King's Landing who talks for hours before they cut off someone's hand." "I've had to learn their language," Sansa said. "If I want to make them do anything, I must speak in terms they care about. Laws, precedent, the gods, not vengeance." Arya made a face. "Vengeance is simpler." "It is," Sansa agreed. "And I will not deny you yours, if the chance comes and it serves what we need. But right now, I need something else from you." She leaned forward, tapping a point on the map spread between them. "The Red Keep, a little inked fortress on the hill. You've been south since you left here," she said. "You know how to move unseen. You can be anyone, or no one. You could walk into the Red Keep with a new face and go places I never could. Hear things I never heard. Get close to people whose words we need." Arya's fingers tightened on needle. "You want me to spy," she said. "Not kill." "Not yet," Sansa said. Listen, look. She told Arya of the letters, of the sermons, of Edmure's testimony and Stannis' arguments and the High Septon's cautious suggestions, of Stormland's lords writing to Winterfell to say they were tired of lions and fire. A great council, Arya repeated, wrinkling her nose. Sounds dull. It might be the most important dull thing in the world, Sansa said. If the Faith and the Maesters and enough lords call for it, Cersei will have to answer. If she refuses, she proves their point. If she accepts, they'll judge her, Arya said slowly, in front of everyone. Yes, Sansa said, but to make that work, we need more than rumors and arguments. We need proof, witnesses, evidence that she ordered things she denies, that she broke the king's peace, the faith's protections, the old laws. Arya's eyes gleamed. And you think I can find that? In her chambers, in Qyburn's rooms, in the dungeons. You can go places my ravens cannot, Sansa said. You can read letters not meant for any eye but hers. You can listen in walls where even Littlefinger has no ears. You can learn who still truly follows her, and who only pretends. And then what? Arya asked. I come back here and tell you secrets while she sits on her throne and laughs? No, Sansa said. You send what you learn to Oldtown, to the High Septon, to lords who have written us of their doubts. Signed affidavits, names, places, words she spoke to the wrong person in the wrong hall. Arya looked unimpressed. That still doesn't kill her, she said. Let them do the killing, Sansa said quietly. With judgments, with exile, with a cell. With whatever punishment a council of lords and faith decide upon when they declare her unfit. Arya stared at the flames for a long moment. When I left Braavos, she said, I told myself I was done with serving other people's lists, other people's gods. I had my own names, my own justice. And Cersei is one of them, Sansa said. I know. Arya's jaw clenched. You're asking me, she said, to put her on trial instead of putting her on a slab. I'm asking you to help build a world where girls like us don't have to become what you became just to survive, Sansa answered. Where killing a queen in the dark isn't the only way to stop her. Silence fell. The fire popped, sending a shower of sparks up the chimney. At last, Arya sighed. You always did like your stories, she said. When we were little, you wanted the songs, the happy endings. This isn't that. No, Sansa said. It isn't. In the songs, villains fall off towers or have their heads chopped off in single combat. In this story, we will have to sit through hours of pompous men talking about oaths. But if at the end of it, Cersei Lannister walks away from that throne with no one to call her queen, that will be our victory. Arya looked at her. You've changed, she said. So have you, Sansa replied. They regarded one another across the map. Two daughters of Winterfell, forged in different fires. Fine, Arya said at last. I'll go. I'll wear a new face. I'll slip into her halls and listen. But if the council fails, if they talk and she still sits there smiling, I will not wait for another plan. I will slit her throat in her bed and be done. Sansa held her gaze. If that day comes, she said, I will not stop you. Arya nodded, satisfied. Then we have a bargain, she said. She stood, rolling up the map with quick hands. Get some rest, she added, unexpectedly gentle. You look like you haven't slept in days. Neither have you, Sansa said. Arya grinned, wolfish. I can sleep on the road. It's easier than listening to maesters. She left in a swish of cloak and steel. When the door closed, Sansa sat alone with the fading fire. She had just sent her little sister, no, not little, not anymore, back into the lion's jaws. Not with a sword drawn, but with eyes open. If the council came pass. If the lords gathered and the faith stood beside them, and if Cersei were brought before them to face a world that no longer believed in her, then maybe, just maybe, the Iron Throne could change hands not with an explosion, nor with a sack, but with a collective turning away. And if they failed? Sansa looked at the place on the map where the Red Keep lay, dotted in ink. "If we fail," she whispered, "you will get your knife, sister, and the world will get the queen it deserves." For now, though, the game moved forward, one letter, one sermon, one stolen secret at a time.